Welcome to our today's webinar, which is on Cyprus Citizenship Program. All right, so my name is Ina Gerasimova. I'm a legal consultant at Eltoma Corporate Services, and today we will talk about the Cyprus citizenship by naturalization. Okay, so our aim today is to cover the sphere of the Cyprus citizenship by naturalization scheme, identifying the key areas and the next steps to enable yourself to apply for a Cyprus passport. I will just run through the agenda quickly. You will see the agenda on the screen now. We will be focusing on 4 areas: the scheme and the actual benefits of a Cyprus passport, that will be provided to you and your family, and the full process, including documentation required in order to support your application. By the end of our time together today, you will have gained an in-depth understanding on Cyprus citizenship scheme, including the benefits and the process, and you will receive the information to assist you in identifying the next steps for yourself and potentially your family in gaining a Cyprus citizenship. So there will be 4 sections in our today's webinar. The first section will be on the scheme and the benefits. The section 2 will be devoted to the criteria and the process. The section 3 will cover the documentation required, and the section 4 will be about how we can assist you in obtaining a Cyprus passport. Okay, so we will start with the section 1, which will cover the scheme and the benefits. So firstly, let's cover a few key points linked to Cyprus. Cyprus is a part of the European Union, and it became a full EU member on the 1st of May 2004. Sometimes Cyprus is quoted as being part of the Middle East, which is not. However, it is located near to this area on the world map, being about 95 kilometers west of the Syrian coast and 325 kilometers north of Egypt. The Republic of Cyprus is the 3rd largest island in the Mediterranean Sea. The population of Cyprus is just over 1.18 million as of September 2017. The time zone of Cyprus is GMT+2, and the local currency is euro. The political system in Cyprus is a presidential democratic republic. The head of state is the president, who is elected by the people of Cyprus and serves a term of 5 years. Okay, so now moving on to the scheme and the benefits itself. So non-Cypriot investors can acquire Cyprus citizenship by naturalization by exception on the basis of the legislation of Civil Registry Laws 2002 to 2015, as you can see on the screen. As a part of Cyprus's policies aiming to further encourage foreign direct investment and to attract high net worth individuals to settle and complete business in Cyprus, the Council of Ministers on the 13th of September 2016 revised the scheme for naturalization of non-Cypriot investors by exception, establishing the new criteria and terms based on which non-Cypriot investors may acquire the Cypriot citizenship. You will find that the Cyprus Citizenship Program offers the most simple and efficient means of obtaining EU citizenship. On the basis of the scheme, a non-Cypriot citizen who meets the following criteria may apply for Cypriot citizenship through naturalization by exception, either in person or through a company or companies in which he or she participates as a shareholder in proportion to his holding percentage, or through investments completed by himself or his or her spouse, or jointly with his or her spouse. Also, a person can, a non-Cypriot citizen can become a Cypriot citizen as a high-ranking senior manager A high-ranking senior manager of a company or companies which meets one of the economic criteria. A high-ranking senior manager may apply provided that he or she receives such a remuneration package which generates for Cyprus tax revenues of minimum €100,000 over a 3-year period. From the 13th of September 2016, a new criteria were introduced for the Cyprus Citizenship by Investment Scheme. The main changes we will focus on are the following. Firstly, the level of investment has been reduced to a total of 2 million, from 2 million to 2.5 million euro, as opposed to 2 million to 3 million under the previous criteria. Parents of the investor can also now obtain the Cyprus citizenship with an additional permanent residence of 500,000 euro. Also, the criteria of bank deposits have been abolished, and now there is a cap set on the investment in Cyprus government bonds. Let's talk through some of the key benefits of the Cyprus Citizenship Program. So in order to clarify, an EU citizen is any person who holds the nationality of an EU country. EU passport holders are entitled to enter, reside, study and work in the European Union, and also Iceland, Liechtenstein, Switzerland and Norway. It is the direct EU citizenship program that has absolutely no residential requirement. Investors and their families can obtain full EU rights, including the ability to live and work in any EU country. They can also get visa-free travel in 168 countries. Passports are normally issued within 6 months from the date of the application. And who are eligible? All nationalities. Dual citizenship is also permitted. There is no requirement to relinquish your current nationality, and a main investment can be sold after 3 years. We will discuss this area in more detail shortly. Let's look more now at the investment amounts involved. The applicant should make an investment of at least 2 million euro for one of the following: either the purchase or construction of a movable property, whether residential or commercial, or whether related to the tourism sector, or otherwise including investment in land or infrastructure-related projects. Or the applicant should make an investment in financial assets of separate companies. We will cover this shortly. Let's focus on real estate option first. So 2 million euro investment in residential real estate in a single property or portfolio of properties is required. Within property investment portfolio of 2 million is required 500,000 euro being allocated to the main private residence. An investor must purchase and maintain a primary resident property in Cyprus for a minimum of €500,000. This is an essential point. This property must be retained as the primary residence, otherwise the Cyprus passport will be recalled. And please note, property purchase up to 3 years prior to the submission of the citizenship application will also count towards the required investment. Also, there is an exit strategy following the passing of the first 3-year period. All other properties, the main investment within the 2 million property portfolio, may be sold following a 3-year period. Okay, so staying with real estate for a few more moments, let's bring our attention to purchasing a property within Cyprus. Of course, this process will be different from that of your current location. And today we will provide a brief overview. So what steps are involved in this process? Firstly, you need to find your property. Please know that most properties on the island are freehold based, although recently in some cities leasehold properties are now also available, however, not common. So what is the difference between freehold and leasehold? Freehold means outright ownership of the property and land on which it is on. Leasehold means that you only own a leasehold property for a fixed period of time, the land returning to the owner of the land after the lease period has expired. The next step will be the preliminary or reservation agreement will be issued or signed. Then the reservation deposit will be paid, normally within a range from 1 to 2% of purchase price. Then you need to agree the payment schedule for the property purchase. After that, the seller and the buyer enter into a contract of sale, which requires signing a legally binding contract. After the written contract has been agreed and signed, this contract can be deposited with the Land Registry Department, which provides a simple and legal instruction called specific performance. This procedure protects the purchaser's ownership rights until the title deeds are issued and transferred to their name. The contract deposited at the Land Registry can only be withdrawn by the purchaser, and therefore the property cannot be sold or transferred to another party. Where the property owner has a title deed, otherwise known as an ownership certificate for your property, the transfer of the title deed with the buyer can be completed straight away. Where the property is still under construction or has recently been built, typically the developer may not have a separate ownership for the property, and you may end up having to wait some time before you receive it. Until the time of issuance, your legal ownership rights over the property are held by the sales contract with the Land Registry Office. Hence, it is very important to have this deposit step completed. Now we will talk about the costs involved. Sorry. So now you can see on the slide the cost information. That's the brief overview. Of course, we cannot go into details within this webinar. So firstly, you need to take into consideration the stamp duty, the approximate amount you will see on the slide. Secondly, you need to consider the property transfer fee. Thirdly, you need to take into account the VAT, which is 5% on main residence and 19% on investment. And lastly, but not the least legal cost is the legal fees, which can be about 1 to 2% from the purchase price. Just few notes. Where the purchaser is required to pay VAT, the purchaser will be exempt from paying property transfer fees. Fee is involved, the purchaser will receive a reduction of 50% on their transfer fees. As for the VAT, where applicable, it will be, as I said, 5% on main residence and 90% on investment. Within the VAT calculation is the square meters size of property. There are new properties which are exempt from VAT, linked to if the application to the town planning permit were submitted prior to the 1st of May 2004. Please also note that the movable property tax has been abolished in Cyprus on the 1st of January 2017. There could also be capital gains tax payable on the sale of property. However, this is out of the scope of this webinar. Your legal advisor can assist with this area where this situation arises. The final point to make in connection to the slide, there is no inheritance tax in Cyprus, being abolished on the 1st of January 2000. Now we're moving on to the section 2, which covers the criteria and the process. So let's focus on the commercial route, which is purchasing, establishing, or participating in Cyprus companies. There is a requirement to invest a minimum of 2 million euro in a Cyprus company or companies. The investment funds shall fully support the investment goals of this company or companies exclusively in Cyprus, founded on a specific investment plan. Actual percentage of shares held in the company is not the key point. The 2 million euro investment is. This separate company or companies must have physical presence in Cyprus and prove operational within Cyprus. In addition, this company or companies must employ a minimum of 5 either Cypriot or EU citizens who have been legally and consistently living in Cyprus during the previous 5 years prior to the application submission date. The minimum number of employees required shall increase if more than one applicant invests simultaneously or almost simultaneously in the same business or company. There is no fixed number of employees if more than one applicant invests simultaneously in the same business. We conclude an additional 3 to 4 employees extra per additional investor will be adequate. The other 500,000 euro must still be utilized to the purchase of the main private residence. Okay, so now focusing our attention on the investment route, which requires 2.5 million euro. Now we will talk about the alternative investment funds. So the investor must invest a minimum of 2 million euro in alternative investment funds units. The alternative investment fund must be established in Cyprus and be licensed and supervised by CISEC, which is Cyprus Security and Exchange Commission. These investments should be made exclusively in Cyprus and should meet the criteria of the scheme and be approved by the Minister of Finance. In order to confirm that the investments meet the criteria of the current scheme and will be maintained for at least 3 years, the manager or the auditor of the fund shall inform in writing and on an annual basis the Ministries of Finance and Interior with reference to the value of the initial investment. It should also be highlighted that the purchase by an alternative investment fund of units of other alternative investment funds is not considered eligible for the purpose of Cyprus citizenship obtaining. Please also take a note that there is still the requirement to purchase the primary residence of 500,000 euro plus VAT where applicable. And lastly, we will talk about the combination of investments. The applicant can make a combination of investments, provided that the total investment will amount to at least 2 million euro. Under this criteria, the investor may also invest in government bonds of Cyprus for the amount up to 500,000 euro, which will be issued for the purpose by the Public Debt Management Office of the Ministry of Finance for a period of at least 3 years. The terms of these special bonds will be determined by the general and special issue terms of the government bonds of the Republic of Cyprus. And just in order to highlight, investments in government bonds through the secondary market are not considered eligible. Okay, so talking about the criteria and the process of obtaining the Cyprus citizenship. As for the Cypriot company's financial assets investment, similarly, the investor must invest a minimum of 2 million euro in the Cyprus company or companies' financial assets such as securities and bonds. These companies have the same criteria as the alternative investment fund. They must demonstrate to having physical presence in Cyprus and significant economic activity within the Republic of Cyprus. Please take note that there is still the requirement to purchase the primary residence of 500,000 euro plus VAT where applicable. Sorry, there is a bit too early. As for the combination of the investments, the investor can set up a combination of the already investments on the condition that the total investment is minimum of 2 million euro. It should be noted that part of this investment combination can be placed in government bonds with the amount of up to 500,000 euro being available for investment. These bonds will be issued for the purpose by the Public Debt Management Office of the Ministry of Finance for a period of at least 3 years. The terms of the special bonds will be determined by the general and special issue terms of the government bonds of the Republic of Cyprus. And as I have already said, the investments in government bonds through the secondary market are not considered eligible. And still there is the requirement to purchase the primary residence of 500,000 euro plus VAT where applicable. Okay, so now we will consider some terms and conditions required for obtaining the Cyprus citizenship. The applicant should have made the necessary investments during the 3 years preceding the date of the application and must retain the said investments for a period of at least 3 years as from the date of the naturalization. The applicant should have a clean criminal record from the country of his or her origin and from the country of residence where different. Furthermore, his name or her name must not be included in the list of persons whose assets within the boundaries of the EU have been frozen as the result of sanctions. As for the residential property, the applicant should own a residential property of at least 500,000 euro plus VAT where applicable. Where the purchase value of the permanent privately owned residence in Cyprus exceeds the amount of 500,000 euro, an additional amount can be used for the purposes supplementing the total amount of the investment required. As for the criterion of the residency in Cyprus, applicant before their naturalization as a Cyprus citizen must hold a residency permit in Cyprus for a period of at least 6 months. A permanent residence permit will be issued prior to naturalization, unless the applicant is a temporary permit holder already. Few more points to note. Where the applicant doesn't already hold a residence permit, they can apply for an immigration permit on the basis of Regulation 6, subsection 2 of the Aliens and Immigration Law, simultaneously with the application for naturalization. Where the application for acquiring an immigration permit is made solely for the purposes of acquiring the Cyprus citizenship, in accordance with the provisions of the scheme, there are no other conditions than those stated in the Cyprus citizenship by naturalization scheme. It is noted this point applies to adult members of the family of the investor who will apply for naturalization. In case the application for naturalization is rejected, the immigration permit obtained in accordance with the provisions of this decision will be cancelled immediately. Now let's look at the process of obtaining the Cyprus passport. We will cover the gathering of what documentation required, documentation is required shortly. This will, of course, include the completion of the application referred to as application by an alien for a certificate of naturalization. Regarding costs, there will be governmental fees to be paid, service provider fee, and third-party fees. Please take note that the application form mentioned will be presented in front of a judge or registrar or a consular officer. Regarding the 2 million euro requirement, it must be in a bank account in Cyprus to apply for a passport. All properties already purchased that can produce evidence to support purchase accordingly. Take note that there is a 3-character reference plus advertisements in Greek in 2 separate issues of any newspaper that are required to support the application. How many times a person needs to come to Cyprus? That's a good question. The applicant or applicants must visit Cyprus in order to submit the permanent residence and citizenship applications and to give the biometric data required for the issuance of the permanent residency card, which is issued in 5 days. As for the submission of the investor's application, the application for the naturalization by exception needs to be submitted at the Ministry of Interior, and the government fees will need to be paid along with the property purchase agreement and all the required documents. At the Ministry of Interior, the original documents should be submitted along with a photocopy of all the documents. For the submission of the application, an appointment will need to be arranged beforehand. In conclusion, it can be said that 2 visits is the standard requirement. As for the application procedure, once the application with supporting documents are submitted. So once an application is submitted, the examination process begins. First of all, documents relating to the business activities and investments of the applicant in Cyprus are sent to the Ministry of Finance for evaluation on whether the applicant indeed meets the criteria established by the Council of Ministers. Simultaneously, the Ministry of Interior investigates whether the applicant meets the other conditions of the decision of the Council of Ministers. If the applicant meets the criteria and conditions of the decision, the Minister of Interior presents the case to the Council of Ministers for final decision. Provided that the application is duly submitted and accompanied by all the necessary supporting documents, and the investor meets the criteria and conditions of the decision of the Council of Ministers, the time frame for the completion of the process is approximately 3 months. It should be noted that the application submission date is the date on which the submission fees were paid, that is noted on the receipt issued by the Cashier's Office of the Ministry. Okay, so moving on, let's discuss the collection of applicants' biometric data. For the issuance of the immigration permit, which an applicant must hold, the collection of the applicant's biometric data, such as fingerprints and photograph, and signature is mandatory. In order for the biometric data to be collected, the applicant is required to appear in person at the Civil Registry and Migration Department. Also, the applicant needs to present the original travel documents and pay the required fee. After the collection of the biometric data, the immigration permit card is issued within 5 working days. When the naturalization procedure is completed and the applicant acquired the Cyprus citizenship, the immigration permit will be immediately cancelled. Where the application for naturalization is rejected for any reason, the immigration permit obtained in accordance with the provisions of the decision of the Council of Ministers, dated the 13th September 2013, will be cancelled immediately. Once the application is approved, the applicant will be able to take all actions for the acquisition of the citizenship and the issue of a Cyprus passport. The procedure for the acquisition of the Cyprus citizenship will be completed provided that the applicant holds a residence permit for a period of at least 6 months. Where this is not the case, he or she will need to wait until the 6-month period is completed. Afterwards, the Civil Registry and Migration Department issues the certificate of naturalization following payment of the amount of €5,000 that constitutes the naturalization certificate issuing fee. Subsequently, the applicant will need to give the oath of faith to the Cyprus Republic before a registrar of a Cypriot court or a consular officer of the Republic of Cyprus. The naturalization certificate must be signed by the applicant either in front of a registrar of a Cypriot court or a consular at any Cypriot consulate abroad within 3 months of receiving approval. Once this procedure is completed, the applicant will be able to acquire a Cypriot passport and identity card. This normally takes one month to complete. Let's move on now and focus our attention on the family aspect. We will look at 4 areas: the investor's spouse, the minor children, the adult children, and the parents of the investor. Included in the decision of the Council of Ministers dated the 13th September 2016 provides for the grant of the Cypriot citizenship to the spouse or partner of the investor, also to the parents of the investor and also to the financially dependent adult children. The minor children of the investor have the right to acquire the citizenship according to the provisions of Section 110, subsection 3 of the Civil Registry Law. As for the investor's spouse, the investor's spouse or partner may acquire the Cypriot citizenship after the investor has filed his application, which is referred to as Form M127. In order to streamline the process of the acquisition of the Cypriot citizenship by the investor's partner or spouse, the Council of Ministers decided to permit the submission of the spouse's or partner's application along with the application of the investor, so that both spouses or partners will be able to acquire the Cypriot citizenship simultaneously. What is the term partner? The decision of the Council of Ministers clarifies that for the purposes of the scheme, the term partner is interpreted in accordance with the provisions of the Civil Partnership Law of 2015. According to this law, the Council recognizes any civil partnership that had been concluded in the Republic of Cyprus or any other state in accordance with the legislation of that state and still is in power. Moving on to minor children now. Minor children are classed from birth age to 18 years old. The application for the grant of the Cypriot citizenship for the children of the investor that are under the age of 18 is submitted after the investor had obtained the Cypriot citizenship and provided that the other parent consents to the grant of the citizenship. The application is filed at the Civil Registry and Migration Department. The documents that need to be submitted are on the slide, so you can see the main list of documents that are required in order to obtain Cyprus citizenship for minor children of the investor. So firstly, it's the application form M126, which must be fully completed and signed before a registrar of a Cypriot court or a consular officer. Please note that the form M126 is in Greek only. The remaining documents are on the slide, so I will not read them out loud. You can read them through. Okay, I will show you the form M126, the naturalization application. As you can see on screen, it is in Greek and it's a 4-page document. We have managed to obtain an English version, which was not easily available from the government's resources. So that's the continuation of this form. As for the adult children, The right to apply for citizenship is permitted for the financially dependent adult children of the investor. Adult children are classed as being within age range from 18 to 28 years of age. Regarding financially dependent definition, the decision of the Council of Ministers states that students up to the age of 28 that are attending an institution of higher education aiming to obtain a diploma or an undergraduate or a master's degree will be classified as financially dependent adult children. The decision excludes individuals who are studying for the acquisition of a professional qualifications, for example, chartered accountants, and children with severe physical or mental disability that renders them unable to work will be also classified as financially dependent adult children, who are eligible for obtaining Cyprus citizenship simultaneously with their parent. Additional key points to note: adult family members of the investor prior to their naturalization as a Cypriot citizens must hold a residence permit in Cyprus. Again, similar to the investor's or his or her spouse criteria. Where the applicant does not already hold a residence permit, he or she may apply for an immigration permit on the basis of Regulation 6, subsection 2 of the Aliens and Immigration Law, simultaneously with the application for naturalization. Again, the same process as with the investor or his or her spouse. In the case where the application for acquiring an immigration permit will be submitted solely for the purposes of acquiring the Cypriot citizenship, in accordance with the provisions of this scheme, there are no other conditions. The application for the naturalization by exception needs to be submitted at the Ministry of Interior following the acquisition of the Cypriot citizenship by the investor. At the Ministry of Interior, the original document should be submitted along with a photocopy of all the documents. For the submission of the application, an appointment will need to be arranged beforehand, following the same process as for investor or his or her spouse. As for the documents required with regards to adult children, you can see them on the slide. Again, there is a completed checklist of investors' family members' application documents. An application form M127 is also required, that it must be fully completed and signed before a registrar of a Cypriot court or a consular officer. The remaining documents you can see on the slide. In summary, investor or his or her spouse or partner can submit and obtain a Cypriot passport at the same time. Then the minor and adult children will follow. Moving on to parents now, investors' parents. The parents of the investor may apply for citizenship after the investor has acquired the Cypriot citizenship. For the investor's parents to be able to apply for citizenship, they are required to hold a permanent privately owned residence in the Republic of Cyprus, the purchase price of which must be at least 500,000 euro plus VAT where relevant. The key point here is that the investor and his or her parents may collectively acquire a residence, provided that the total value of this home property is at least 1 million euro plus VAT where relevant. Regarding immigration permits, the procedure needs to be followed for the submission of the citizenship application of the investor's adult family members that do not already hold a residence permit. The application for the naturalization by exception needs to be submitted at the Ministry of Interior after the acquisition of the Cypriot citizenship by investor, as a copy of the investor's naturalization certificate must be included in the parent's application. There is a similar process to the investor for application form completion. gathering documentations, and completion of the checklist of investors' family members' application documents. This is, of course, being a different checklist to that of the investors. We will review all documents shortly. Regarding the parents' documents linked to the purchase of the permanent residential property, the following documents are required. So firstly, the contract of sale. Secondly, title deeds or proof of registration of the contract with the Lands and Service Department. Thirdly, the proof of payment of the agreed purchase price. And finally, the copy of the wire transfer of a separate commercial banking institution in the name of the seller or the seller's company. So as promised, now we will consider the documentation required. Focusing our attention now on the documentation required to support the application, we should first cover how the document should be presented, what certification and language is required. All documents issued by a foreign authority should be translated to either Greek or English and must be duly endorsed as true authenticated. They should bear the stamp apostille if they are issued by the countries that have signed the Hague Convention. Otherwise, they should be sealed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the issuing country and the diplomatic mission of the Republic of Cyprus in the issuing country. This applies to all documents being submitted for all parties involved, that is investors, spouse, minor children, adult children, parents of the investor. The list of the required documents for the investor application is presented on the slide. I will not read them out loud. You can see them for yourself. Please note that with regards to the newspaper advertisement, it should contain the following. Notice is hereby given that full name of applicant or full postal address has applied to the Minister of the Interior for naturalization, and any person who knows any reason why naturalization should not be granted is hereby invited to send a written and signed statement of the facts to the Minister of the Interior, Nicosia. To recap, this newspaper advert needs to be in Greek. Where the applicant is a high-ranking senior manager, also required are a copy of the employment contract and receipts from the Department of Inland Revenue. The original application M127 and all the required documents in their original form need to be submitted at the Ministry of Interior. Along with the original application and documents, an additional photocopy of the application and all the documents should also be submitted. Please see for your reference the M127 naturalization application form. It's a full-page application form. It's only for your information so that you can review it. And there was also, and there is also a checklist for investor, which is also 4-page long document. Right, so still with the investor's application, regarding the property purchase area, the following documentation is required, which is presented again on the slide: the contract of sale, the title deeds or proof of registration of the contract, copy of the wire transfer to a separate commercial banking institution, an evaluation certificate. You can see all the documents on the slide. And that's the continuation of the investment documentation requirements. There are actually many more documents required. You can drop us an email linked to this particular area, and we will revert to you shortly with a full list for your particular situation. Oops, sorry. Focusing now on the spouse or partner. As mentioned previously, the application of the spouse or partner of the investor can be submitted along with the application of the investor, so that both spouses, partners will be able to acquire the Cyprus citizenship simultaneously. The documents that need to be submitted are on the slide, so please have a look at them. There is also a key point to note that where the application is not submitted at the same time as the investor's application, the following documents should also be submitted. A copy of the investor's naturalization certificate and copy of the investor's Cyprus passport. Right. So as you will now understand, there are many steps linked to the documentation stage of the process, fully dependent on the person's own circumstances. It is at this stage we should cover what can be the reasons for rejection of an application. You can see the main reasons on the slide. So this can be previous criminal records or bankruptcy, or the person is classified as a politically exposed person, or the person has frozen assets linked to sanctions within the EU, or the required documentation or information was not submitted to the Ministry of Interior in a timely manner. Now we will consider briefly the costs involved in obtaining a Cypriot passport. So the main costs include the Cyprus governmental costs. You can see them on the slide, and also external third-party costs, such as service provider costs, newspaper adverts, too are required, apostille costs, courier costs. Right, so now wrapping up today's webinar, how we can assist you. You need to understand the process, the forms to be completed, where to go, what documentation you require to provide, and how to provide it, original or certified true copies. This can be a quite confusing and frustrating element of the Cyprus citizenship process. It is best to gain expert advice and support throughout the full process, which is, of course, here at Eltoma we can provide for you. At Eltoma, we have both the experience, knowledge, and resources to support the completion of the application forms. We have both Greek and English-speaking people in our office at Eltoma. The process per your individual requirements and gathering all required documentation in the required format. We have, as I said, we have multi-language skilled staff to assist at all stages of the process. You will be appointed your own Cyprus citizenship officer who will accompany you through the full process, including where necessary visits to the ministry offices. We suggest a call or email us for further information. Right, so we are coming to the end of our webinar program today. I will just take a moment of your time to explain how we can assist you further. We collaborate with island-wide developers and estate agents, bringing varied selection of properties for purchase. Some of the examples you can see on the slide. We are committed to providing our clients the highest level of service and convenience, including assisting in locating the properties for you and your family needs, which support the Cyprus Citizenship Program. In addition, summarized on screen is some of the other services we can provide you with in case you need these services. And you can see our contacts on the screen now. So we have two main offices located in Cyprus and Singapore. We also have an office in the UK, offices in Russia and Ukraine as well. Thank you so much for your attention. As we have exceeded the time limit for this webinar, we will revert to you shortly if you have any questions with regards to this topic. And until then, thank you so much for your attention. Have a good week, a nice day, and we look forward to seeing you during our next webinars. Thank you so much.